Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome back to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today, our topic is leading abroad. I am glad to have with me Mr. Travis Tangeman, who is the founder and CTO of HarborLink Network, as well as the IT and marketing strategist for Impact Employment Solutions. What's interesting about Travis, I feel now that I can say I've known him for a few years. He serves as Toledo Rotarian President, and he leads such a great group of people who are moving and leading, such great projects from abroad. And so I'm excited to have him here to talk about what he's doing, his leadership, and the qualities it takes to lead in these different areas. And I'm going to start first by his work piece. And this is interesting because as we were talking about his leading of HarborLink, finding out that he is a pioneer in the space of Wi-Fi industry. So welcome to the show, Travis.
Thanks, Jen. It's good to be here. I appreciate it. The thing you need to know about me is I don't like to talk about myself. So it's weird to hear somebody talk to me about me. So to hear somebody say, oh, he's a pioneer in an industry, and you kind of roll your eyes going, whatever. But, we do have a long history. My brother and I started our company in 1998 and before the word Wi-Fi existed. And as we progressed, we developed in the hotspot world as it was as it was coming out. And at the time, it was all pay for wireless. And so you would go to a Starbucks, you would go to the airport, you go to a coffee shop, and you would have to pay to use wireless internet. We started down that same path ourselves. And we were doing it. Our company's called HarborLink because we were going to do it for marinas. Because we said, who has money to pay for internet and doesn't have access? And we said, you know who it is? Boaters. And we also got to wear Bermuda shorts and hang out on docks, and it was really awesome. We had a great idea. But what we realized is not only was it a seasonal market, we ourselves didn't have an appetite to use the product. We didn't want to pay for it. And we both agreed, why are we doing this if we're not actually willing to pay for our own product? So we agreed it had to be like television. It had to be like radio. It had to be free, and it had to be paid for somehow. So we decided, why don't we do an advertising-based model around Wi-Fi? So in 1999-2000 range, we developed a way to wrap the login screen that now everybody sees where it says, do you agree to terms? We came up with that back in around 2000, and we would put it in places like Buffalo Wild Wings. And that was our first locations, mainly because we wanted it for ourselves. We would meet after work every day to go over what we came up with that day. We're like, if we just had internet here. And I kind of wanted to have a beer. So we'd sit down and beat up. We're like, if I had internet, I'd show you what we came up with last night. And so we went to them and they said, sure, put it in. And so we put a wireless into a Buffalo Wild Wings in Dayton, Ohio, mainly for ourselves. So we could kind of test things, whatever. And it went so well, it became a national contract. But what we did was we made that login page and wrapped it in Budweiser ads or what's special at the restaurant this week. And that's how the model evolved. But yeah, we were the first free to the user wireless network in the country.
It's amazing. I think about how that's impacted so many individuals who I know myself, who I spent many a day sitting in a coffee shop or a tea shop and getting Wi-Fi and writing and reading. And now looking back on it, people really, that's an expectation.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And what's funny is I don't even really reflect back on that history much anymore because it's such an assumption that wherever I go, I just automatically know I'm going to have Wi-Fi. It doesn't even occur to me that maybe I had some small, tiny role in that somewhere. But I go to a coffee shop now. I work for hours on end. We used to laugh. When we first launched in Buffalo Wild Wings, we went by a table and it was 4 teenage kids, all with laptops open because nobody had phones yet. It was well before that. And we looked at the forum and we said, hey, do you mind us asking, what are you guys doing? They said, we're talking to each other. And they were using instant message and they were silent. And we said, what have we done? We've enabled people to kill social interaction.
Well, we're not going to own that. Oh my goodness.
There's positives and negatives to every development. So
It's amazing because of the schools too. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
when COVID hit, I mean, looking back on that, that was one of the biggest concerns that school systems had is homework, getting homework out to the students. And, does mom and dad have Wi-Fi to be able to do that? And I do remember, they're solving the problem, trying to go to places that had Wi-Fi. And so in another way, you impacted in a positive way the educational system by just coming up with the concept that Wi-Fi should be free at locations that you're actually going and sitting at.
And actually, what's fun there is now as technology is progressing even further, we've had conversations with school districts about what is now known as private 5G. So you think of 5G as Verizon, AT&T, and something you pay for your phone. There's actually a band in the frequency similar to Wi-Fi that is actually non-licensed and free. So we've talked to them, to school districts and libraries, about what if you put a small tower on the top of your locations that could then create a bubble as wide as a mile wide that works like cellular, but it acts just like Wi-Fi. So down to to that level, you're providing your own internal school network to the community surrounding you to be able to accomplish the same thing. So the technologies are progressing to keep that possibility there. So it's really exciting.
So that leads me into your passion. It sounds like you're passionate about connectivity. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And then what you think with the accomplishments? I mean, this is a pretty big accomplishment right there, but your passion and your accomplishments.
So when it comes to technology, the term the digital divide has been there from basically the time I got into technology. We've always talked about the digital divide and how to solve it. It kills me we're still talking about it 25 years after I started my company, but it really does dive into some of my passions, which is how do we make the world better for people? And whether I'm talking technology, whether I'm talking about Rotary, what drives me is how do I make the world better than how I found it? And you can accomplish it either way. So through technology or through service above self, which is the motto of Rotary, we can find a way to make the world better for everyone.
Rotary, that's a special place when you talk about service above self and when we talk about leadership, leading the way. You just came back from leading abroad, going to another country and trying to help those that are there. Can you talk about that experience?
Sure. What's really special about Rotary is we are not a hyper-focused group where we only look at one topic and try and solve that one topic. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but we take a broad-based approach to several areas. So whether that's helping youth in our area, whether that's people with disabilities, whether that's vocational services, whether that's water and environmental concerns, or if we're in this case talking international. So we do a lot of efforts here in Northwest Ohio, but internationally, we've had the opportunity to take advantage of what are known as global grants. And global grants are where multiple clubs come together. They work within their own district to get matching funds, and then those funds go to Rotary International where they actually get matched again. And because of that, we can go somewhere else in the world where our dollar stretches so much further and make massive impacts for relatively low overall costs. So a good example, to your point, we just went on a trip to Honduras, and Rotary Club of Toledo has a history in Honduras that's very strong. It is amazing to see the impact that our club and so many other clubs have had with the Rotary clubs that are there, where we've gone into communities that are the poorest of poor with no infrastructure, with no ability to, get education to the kids, things like that. So we've built schools. We have built dams up in the mountains to collect water, purify, and then distribute to homes. The impact is massive. So we had an opportunity in January for a group of 6 Toledo Rotarians to attend a conference down in Honduras called Uniendo. And Uniendo is a service fair where clubs from all over Central America come with what they are looking for help with. And other clubs come to see what they want to try and help with, how we can impact that community. Also, while we were there, we went with group called International Samaritan. International Samaritan focuses on garbage dump communities. So towns of people that literally are built on garbage heaps where the people are going up into the garbage dump every day to pick anything they can find that might make them up to $2 a day. It's devastating to watch. You are looking at children who are dirty, uneducated. They have no running water in their homes or their village. When we first got there, we looked at the bottom of the road. I said, well, at least, there's that water truck at the bottom of the hill. And they said, oh no, that's a private company that comes up here and sells it to the people. And so you saw such a need that, poverty is not unique in any way, shape, or form. We have poverty throughout the United States, but the difference when we were abroad is seeing the lack of people around it to help. In the United States, yes, we have poverty, horrible poverty, but it's in communities that have the ability to help, and they can help in their own community. Here and when we were in Honduras, it was different. And so we looked at it and said, okay, there's this garbage dump community that has no water. We went to another one 2 days later that did have running water. And the difference in their life was incredible to us. And we all of us from Toledo Rotary that went on this trip said, okay, our new mission in life is how do we get running water to this community? And the answer was about $250,000 to bring running water to over 2,500 families. How do you not immediately come back and say, that's my new life mission, is to lead into this area to make their lives better? Because if we can solve the situation they're living in there, not only are we making their life better, we're also helping our own country. Because if you look at the catastrophe at the southern border, the devastation, and imagine being such a condition that you feel the need, you have to flee your country as your only option. Help get them educations. You help get them running water so they have an environment that they want to stay within, because they don't want to leave their family. They don't want to come here. They feel driven by the need to come somewhere that they can get away to. So you don't build a wall, you go build a water well.
Can you talk a little bit about, now, I'm hearing passion all over that with community and with leadership. What are the characteristics? That it takes a special person to go and to want to help those that are actually doing or trying themselves to do better. They have limited resources, and to just take that on and say, this is my personal mission, I'm going to try. But you can't do it by yourself. So what are the characteristics when you're working in that group or that team to try to take on a challenge like that?
I think the characteristic that's most important is empathy, not sympathy, empathy. Anybody can go, oh God, I feel sorry for you. You need to understand. You need to understand the plight. You need to understand somebody's perspective. If you don't understand, then sympathy does no good. So empathy to me is the most important. I don't care if we're talking about a service project in Honduras or in your own company. If you don't have empathy to your employees at your company, you don't understand that somebody's maybe having a rough go at home. If you don't understand, then you don't understand maybe why they're not performing up to par. Same thing in an international service project. If I don't understand the true need of a community, I can walk in and go, you know what, I can solve this tomorrow. It's not important to them. Well, what am I solving?
All right.
So to me, empathy is the number one characteristic that any leader has to have, regardless of situation. The next part is, on top of understanding, then listening, and not always having to be the first voice in the room. I think far too many people believe leadership means that you talk the loudest, you talk the most. I think the person who actually talks quite a bit less, but knows when to interject, that's a leader to me. So that's kind of the qualities I look for.
Those are two major qualities. I know when we talk about PIN leaders, for the name of the podcast, we do look for that strength of character and being, and that I think that plays in with the empathy to be able to have that, and the listening skills, so critically important. It also builds that self-awareness too, being straightforward with understanding. When you went over to Honduras, or even when you, with your company with HarborLink, you started off with you saw a need, but then you went over with a plan.
Yep.
Right? It's not like you had to figure out a plan, the team, you had a group of 6 to go and to go to Honduras, but you had to have a plan. And so as a PIN leader, going in there and understanding those, listening and being, having empathy, of course, and care for those that work with you or around you or as part of your team. But it sounds like it's also important to understand what you're going into. It
is. And it's also important to not have preconceived notions, because you're going to have them. You need to put them aside. So our big one going down there was understanding, we went with the plan of, we are coming back with results. We didn't want to just spend Rotary dollars to get 6 of us down to Honduras to say, I went to a new country, wasn't that fun for me? We said, this is going to be a working trip. You are going to come back more exhausted than when you went down. So this is not a vacation. This is not pool time. We have a mission to accomplish here, and that's all we said ahead of time. The next was, we put our faith in the local folks down there, whether that was International Samaritan or the good people at the Usula Rotary Club, who we have a long history with, who met us at the airport, drove us around to say, look, they know the environment. Let them guide you on here. Just keep your eyes open and let's learn so we can make the best impact.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you definitely made an impact when you came back stateside and then shared that information with the other Rotarians. That word spreads. Once you see the videos and capturing that information, I'm like, really, we think when you talk about garbage dumps and people actually living in them, you get to see it firsthand what that looks like and understanding the challenge is just having clean water.
Yeah, and it wasn't a hard message to sell. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the important thing that happened there, and all credit to Kevin Mullen, who is our president-elect at Toledo Rotary, he made sure we actually documented the whole trip. And I think it's actually something that's a really useful tip for other people who are looking to lead in these kinds of situations is don't just write it down on paper. Mm-hmm. We did interviews after every single day to get fresh feedback on exactly what we saw that day so that the emotions were still real. They were, spontaneous, and you were getting the true impact of what we saw because we saw some pretty horrific things. I can describe it now, but it does not have the same impact as when I came out and still had tears in my eyes from watching a 2-year-old child pick through garbage in a garbage dump. These are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. So that part to me was really important.
Yeah, visual is very impactful, and I think it did and captured the emotions at the time. I think that was a great addition to bring at least a piece of that back to those that could not experience it.
Well, and I thought it was very important in explaining to people why we do international projects, because I get this a lot. You know what? Why aren't we focusing on our own community? Why aren't we focusing on our own? And I shared with you earlier, Toledo Rotary this year, God bless this organization, has the ability to put over $280,000 in grants per year into the communities. And people say, well, why aren't you focusing locally? Of that $280,000 this year, I believe about 240 stayed in Toledo and in Northwest Ohio. So no, there's an absolute massive impact this organization makes locally. But when you're showing somebody images of a garbage dump in Honduras, kind of hard to compete with the imagery. Mm-hmm. So it's an opportunity to remind people why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think also too, some individuals may not know about the impact of how you take your 10,000 and then other clubs add their 10,000. So it's a small piece of it, but Rotary does do quite a bit in the areas. Each Rotary does hyper-focus in the area that they're housed in stateside and in our local regions and communities. I think that it's a fantastic way of leading abroad and leading here too.
Well, and what's fun about Rotary, a lot of people are like, oh, are you a member of this Rotary or that Rotary? And there's 30,000 plus clubs in the world. There's 1.4 million Rotarians. Toledo Rotary happens to be about 300 members, and we have a long history. And yes, we're a wonderful club. We're a great club. We're a whole club. But we're no better than a 10-person club down the street who's been in existence for 10 years. It doesn't matter. These are people, whether it's 300 or 10, all who have a focus of trying to make the world better. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, they're having fun. They're hanging out with people, being friends, having coffee, what might be, having lunch. But they're all making their own impact in their own way. So we're all making the impact we can make. Ours just happen to have a bigger dollar amount because we have a lot more people and a lot bigger fund. But it doesn't make us better. Just makes us different, and we focus on different things.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and just having, this conversation about some of the great things and the impact you've done, not only with the abroad program that Rotary's doing, but also the impact you made stateside with creating a company that pioneered the Wi-Fi experience. So I appreciate you coming on, Travis.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. I haven't thought about it in a long time, so it's kind of fun. But
it's great to capture that historical moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Shanda.
All right, so thank you. And thank you to our listeners who do a great job of liking and sharing our podcast. Please make sure that you make it a great day. Focus on where you can lead and how you can make an impact. And until next time,
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Mays & Associates Ltd., creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building Find out more at www.mazeassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.